What is happening, everybody? It is Trey here. I'm joined again by my dad, Sean. And today on Reactions to the Classics, we're going to be taking a look at the Jimi Hendrix Experience's final album, Electric Ladyland. This is the first time we've listened to this record. We have reviews up of the Experience's previous two albums, Are You Experience and Axe as Bold as Love. Thought those were great, and finishing it out with this double LP. So if this is your first time stopping by the channel, y'all, we appreciate it. Here at Reactions to the Classics, we take a look back at some of the most classic records of all time, do a detailed track-by-track review of them. If that sounds like something interesting to you, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button, and we also have links to our Facebook and Patreon down below if you'd like to get some perks yourself. And all that to say, let's just dive into this.
Well, as you already mentioned, it is the last studio album for Jimi Hendrix Experience. This was the only one that was credited to Hendrix as producer. It was their most commercially successful album, #1 in the US, #6 in the UK. It is number 55 on the Rolling Stones top 500 albums of all time. It is a mix of styles which shows Jimi's wide-ranging influence on him. It includes psychedelic blues, social commentary, and 60s era Britpop. It was mainly recorded at the newly opened Record Plant Studios in New York with Chaz Chandler as producer, at least for a little while, and engineers Eddie Kramer and Gary Kellgren. Hendrix was famous, and it got worse on this album, for his studio perfectionism. He and drummer Mitch Mitchell recorded over 50 takes of Gypsy Eyes over 3 sessions. Hendrix was insecure about his voice, Trey, even after all this time, so a lot of times he put up panels in the studio and did his recording so no one could see him sing.
And going back to Chaz Chandler, he eventually left producing the album because of just the perfectionism, the vibe that the studio would bring. Oftentimes Hendrix would go after concerts or go to clubs, jam with people, bring sometimes up to 20-25 people to the studio, and it got a little chaotic for Chandler, and Noel Redding also mentioned that as well. It almost turned into a party atmosphere. Chandler only actually produced a few tracks.
3 tracks, that's
on
it.
this record. Everything else Jimmy arranged and kind of was at the helm at. It's just gonna take us right into this thing. First track, And the Gods Made Love.
Yeah, this is only 1:19. It's basically an instrumental, although there is a back masking there. Jimi is actually saying, just hear that for a second. Yes, 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 I get it. Okay. Okay, one more time. Instrumentals on this album all the way through are off the charts, and I think this was a way to set the table for that.
I think so too. Almost reminded me of Axe as Bold as Love's EXP, kind of had that spacey, otherworldly feel. And then that takes us right into the title track, Have You Ever Been to Electric Ladyland? This is a groovy, chill vibe to it.
It is.
And here you have Hendrix on the bass, the regular guitar, the vocals, and then Mitch Mitchell was on the tambourine and drums, of course, and Redding wasn't on this track.
Yeah, Redding's gone a lot because he started his own band in mid-68 called Fat Mattresses, so he's in and out on this album, so Jimi does do a lot of bass work. This song is basically about Jimi's conquest with women, which is what is the predominant theme throughout this entire album. There's other stuff that goes on, but Jimi liked the ladies, and Jimi liked to write about how much he liked the ladies.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that stood out to me was the backing vocals. Redding is on those, him and Mitchell.
Yes.
And I thought they brought a nice kind of sweet sound that you aren't used to the experience of bringing forth here, and it stood out as being different from the rest.
I agree 100%. Next up is Crosstown Traffic. It has an interesting sound during the guitar, Trey, where Jimi made a makeshift kazoo with a cone and plastic wrap that he put over it and kind of blew on that, so it's not really a kazoo, it's just something that Jimi made up in the studio. And this album in particular, he would grab anything he could to try to get the sound out that he heard in his head. It's talking about the crosstown traffic in New York City, but it's also really alluding to the fact of a woman that he's with and that she's a roadblock to him, yet he wants to be with her, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I like that it was more kind of almost like an acid rock blues
fusion.
Compared to the more laid-back song on Electric Ladyland.
Yeah, exactly.
So again, we're already seeing the differing styles that are just peppered throughout this entire record. Again, really enjoyed this one. Thought the uptown, kind of rocking nature of it just got you going a little bit, and that kazoo-like guitar feature just
interesting, man.
So unique. And then that transitioned us to the end of side 1, and the longest studio recording the Experience ever had. Voodoo Child. This track is based on the Muddy Waters blues song Rollin' Stone, but this has all original lyrics and music to it. As I mentioned earlier, Hendrix and the band often like to explore the New York club scene and jam with performers, bring them back to the studio. This particular night, Redding stormed off and wasn't present on this recording.
Organist Steve Winwood from Traffic, bassist Jack Cassidy from Jefferson Airplane were there. Hendrix proceeded to record with Mitch Mitchell, Winwood, and Cassidy. The remainder of those people, that Trey that you mentioned, were in the studio, were on hand to provide the ambient crowd noise that we hear. It's kind of a blues style ranging from early Delta blues all the way to electric blues to the more sophisticated style of B.B. King. Several of the verses tell of different animals and what they did following a well-established blues tradition. In later verses, Hendrix, who we know well through his other two albums, is a big fan of science fiction, adds references to the outskirts of infinity and Jupiter's sulfur mines. For me, Trey, this song is an experience, no pun intended. Like, I don't know that this is a song I would listen to a lot, but it's a musical journey. If you want to listen to one song that shows what Jimmy's all about as far as just his ability and just a jam, I feel like I'm just sitting there at a jam. Somebody's just in the studio free-flowing. So for me, that's what works on this. It is a unique kind of behind-the-scenes look of what it would have been like to be in the studio. As far as something that I would want to listen to on repeat, this is not it, but I respect it for what it is.
Yeah, and that club atmosphere was there from those
other you hear people. Everybody cheering. And
so yeah, you do feel like you're just sitting in the crowd listening to these guys. I thought the use of the organ, that's one of the first, maybe the first use of the Experience, using that organ in there, again, gave it a unique sound. I thought that interplayed very nicely off of Jimmy's masterful guitar work. Mitch Mitchell maybe had his best drum solo in here. Really felt that midway through. Just the way Jimmy arranged the solos to go in, I thought was just fantastic, and just gave a very nice, laid back, yet you could tell these guys just had such passion through the music they were playing. So quite the way to end side one, and then we start off side two with a Noel Redding track, Little Miss Strange.
Yeah, this song was co-written by Redding. It's based on one of his songs, She's So Fine. It has allusions to Hendrix's complicated relationships with women through the years, and also brings up the magical women. For me, the second I heard this thing, because Redding's the one singing, it sounded like they were a take on the Beatles. I'm not saying it was, but I'm saying it has a very Beatlesque type of sound to it.
I'd agree with that, and instrumentally there was just an underlying almost fuzziness to the guitar.
Yeah, especially in the start, and that was really good.
Exactly, and that interplayed off. I'm glad they threw Noel Redding a song here. It has one of the more unique Hendrix solos towards the end as well, and then that takes us to track 6, Long Hot Summer Night.
Yeah, the premise of the song is this girl's gone, but she's coming back to rescuing.
And I thought on this track and throughout the whole album, but if you listen to this with headphones, you're gonna really see the great stereo panning that.
And you got to do that.
Yeah, that the production had. So Kramer and Jimmy did a great job doing that. There's a cool little line in there that mentioned that everybody's on fire, but I'm snowing in a cold blizzard. Jimmy, as we'll note later on, was a huge fan of Dylan, and I could see a little bit of that influence here just throughout the record with some of his lines. He's very descriptive with his words and lyrics here, and it paints a good setting in most of these tracks, and that's what we had here as well. And then that'll take us to the next song.
Come On, Part 1, often called Let the Good Times Roll. This is one of the first songs Jimmy started playing back in high school at the clubs in Seattle.
Yeah, and this was actually the last song recorded for the record. They were noted that they just had to kind of fill out one more track.
Yeah.
They went into the studio, started jamming a little bit, and thus this track was born. There's a wickedly fast solo in here, and not one of the top tracks by any means, more kind of middle of the road for me personally. But, obviously the musicianship is excellent. Gypsy Eyes is the next track, based on a standard ancient blues field holler. Hendrix creates some great synergy between his vocal and the lead guitar riff. It's loaded with a collection of riffs, and it neatly compiles together into this track.
Yeah, and he really is utilizing the recording studio as an instrument, since he produced this one and kind of taken it over. And just the guitars just swirl around you, man, is the best way. It's a blues thing, but it's also a psychedelic, and I think it really works. Jimmy's voice sounds different on this one than a lot of the others.
It's got a hypnotizing type of thing.
Yes.
It sounds like, I don't know, there's definitely something going on with the vocal. I thought it was a big hit with me, as well as this next track,
Burning of the Midnight Lamp. It actually has backing vocals from the R&B group Sweet Inspirations, and the work on it began way back in May of '67 during the recording sessions for Axis Bold as Love, but they could just never get it right, Trey. So Hendrix said this about it: there are some very special personal things in here, but I think everyone can understand the feeling when you're traveling that no matter what your address, there's no place you can call home. The feeling of a man in a little old house in the middle of a desert where he's burning the midnight lamp. You don't mean for things to be personal all the time, but it is. I mean, it's about loneliness.
Just like Voodoo Child with the organ, I thought the harpsichord was a unique sound with Hendrix's guitar, and then we had those angelic backing vocals.
Yeah.
This song was, again, another big hit for me. I really enjoyed it. Just thought it had a unique sound to it, and it's something that you could really see that Jimmy was kind of pushing the boundaries of his sound at this point.
Next up is Rainy Day Dream Away. It starts off side 3, Trey, and it has an interesting story around it. They were in 1968, they were at the Miami Pop Festival. It was a 2-day event. It only went one day and then it rained out.
Yeah, and then as they were driving back, it just kind of came to him. He had his notebook always, jotting down lyrics, and this again was another solid track. I wouldn't put it in the upper tier or anything, but every song on here is, at the very least, I think solid.
Oh, I agree 100%. Same thing for me. This song's solid on this album. That brings us to 1983, A Merman I Should Turn to Be. This is 13 minutes and 25 seconds. This featured the flute player from Traffic. Earlier we had the organist from Traffic, Steve Winwood. This one has Chris Wood. It has Hendrix playing all the guitars, the vocals, the percussion, and the bass. Redding was absent from the track completely. Features backwards guitar and flute parts, the sound of seagulls, which were produced by manipulating microphone feedback, and a flexitone that makes a ringing bell sound.
Yeah, and this reflects kind of the weariness that Jimmy was feeling in the world, as a lot of the second disc does.
Yes.
It talks about two lovers in a pretty much war-torn like place. They're gonna go down into the sea and just live as a merman and a mermaid, essentially, and the verses build up and tell a story chronologically of just they're getting ready to go, they're looking back, and then as they start to go down into the sea, we get this unreal solo and then just this instrumental breakdown that you just got to listen to. It's tough to describe.
Yeah.
It's incredibly unique. There's a bunch of it just gave me a very sci-fi and watery type feel. Again, Jimmy showed that what he wanted to convey through the music and emotion and the sound in his head, he was able to do.
For me, it works kind of like Voodoo Child, in that you're taking on this instrumental ride, except for Jimmy's responsible for most of it, as I noted earlier. He played almost all the instruments. Just one of those songs that you just got to hear. Is really hard to describe.
I'd say it's definitely the most creative track on here, bar none. And again, you wonder after listening to this track, as studio technology advanced through the 70s, what Hendrix could have done, had he still been with us. But then we go to the next track, Moon Turn the Tides, Gently, Gently Away. It's pretty much just sets a unique ambience just with an instrumental here.
Yeah, it's only 58 seconds long, and that rolls us right into Still Raining, Still Dreaming. This is just a continuation of Rainy Day, Dream Away. The Miami Pop Festival, all of that good stuff. Not a lot of lyrics on this one. He kind of just repeats the same lines, but a nice feel to it.
Yeah, it definitely kind of brought the mood back up, I think, a little bit. Very good pounding drums and a solo that, again, I think just after you go through the craziness that Merman was, this brought it back rocking a little bit. Then we go into the next track, House Burning Down, which details the confrontation between the main character and the riots around the Vietnam War in the late 60s. Jimmy stated that we made the guitar sound like it was on fire. It's constantly changing dimensions, and up on top, that lead guitar is cutting through everything. I like the line in here, the truth is straight ahead, so don't burn yourself instead. Try to learn instead of burn. Probably one of the more political tracks Jimmy ever did.
Yeah, and I like it for that reason. I think he does such a good job of this whole album. He produced it. It actually says on the front of it, it was directed and produced by Jimi Hendrix. The sequencing of the songs I don't think is accidental, and I think this one fits very nicely from what we are about to go into.
Bob Dylan cover, All Along the Watchtower. One of my favorite songs of all time.
Yeah, it was written and recorded by Dylan, as you mentioned, off the John Wesley Hardin album from 1967. The publicist for Dylan actually gave it to Jimmy, so Jimmy had this song before it was released, brought it in the studio, they listened to it, they laid it down. Became his biggest hit. Number 5 in the UK, the first stereo-only UK single to go into the top 10. Number 20 in the US. It is number 47 on the Rolling Stones Top 500 Greatest Songs of All Time. Just an unbelievable track.
Yeah, and Jimmy actually played bass at the final section. Noel was a little dissatisfied with how the recording was going. Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones played various percussion instruments on the track.
Yeah, and Dylan described his reaction to hearing Hendrix's version, quote, "It overwhelmed me, really. He had such talent. He could find things inside a song and vigorously develop them. It is just one of the greatest songs of all time." You said that. For a Dylan song, it doesn't have a ton of lyrics, which fits this well because Jimmy doesn't need a ton of lyrics because of the instrumentation. If he has too many lyrics, the instrumentation can't shine. I think this is the perfect balance. It was the right Dylan song to choose.
You have these different sets of characters, the Joker and the Thief, and the Watchtower is there. All the people in the high class are there partying.
And you're seeing over everything.
Two riders were approaching and the wind began to howl. We go into a great solo. Midway through the song, Hendrix drops one of his greatest guitar solos and one of the best guitar solos
of all time, baby.
Yeah, it's just a fantastic record. If I'm on a desert island and can only have 10-15 tracks, this is going to be one of them. I love this song so much, and just everything that it brings forth. That takes us into just another iconic song, Voodoo Child. Slight return, goes back to some of the themes of our 15-minute jam sesh song earlier in the album.
Yeah, it was actually recorded the next day. ABC Television was coming in doing a little special on Hendrix and the Experience, so instead of like coming up with something new, they wanted to show them in the studio coming up with something new, but Jimmy said, well, let's play this. And
as soon as it starts, it's just got that really funky vibe to it.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite Hendrix songs as well. I mean, I really challenge anybody to find another 2 songs that end an album better than this. I think this is the best 2 songs to end an album ever. I just love just kind of the grand nature, the imagery of the song. Stand next to a mountain, chop it down with the edge of my hand. Just what a fantastic way. And again, you have another of Hendrix's best solos that he ever laid down in the studio. So I just think it's a perfect way to end this grand album. And that'll take us to our favorite tracks. For me, those final 2. I did like Crosstown Traffic.
Me too, because that's such a different sound to it.
And I'm going to throw in 1983.
I'll go with the first 3 you said. And that brings us to our overall grade. Trey, what are you giving this thing?
I prefer Are You Experienced more, but this, I think, is without a doubt his most impressive album musically. Out of everybody that we've lost in music in that list is far and wide. I think we lost the most probably innovation with Hendrix leaving. We were right on the cusp here in the late 60s of continuing the studio innovations, technological innovations, and you can see on this definitely how he was expanding his style. There was something in here, I think, for everybody. I'm going to give it an 8.75. I think that the ending 2 tracks, like I said, are the best ending 2 tracks of any album ever, and it was definitely something that the Experience could be proud of to end their career on.
That's funny. We did not talk about this at all, and I'm giving it an 8.75
really?
as well. I am. Now, I'm different than you and different than most. I actually like Axis Bold as Love. That's my favorite. This is second. The instrumentation on this is at next level. I mean, this is a genius, and people throw around that word way too much. This is a genius at work. And of all the people we lost, and many of them in the 27 club, Jimmy is such a huge loss. Has such an effect on music from there on in. Had such respect of his peers. So I'm really sad this is the last thing that we're going to review of his, but I'll tell you what, I'd never really heard any Hendrix besides the huge hits. It's been a great journey for me to do these 3 albums.
Absolutely, and that's just a testament. We're still talking about it 50 years later, and the album still sounded fresh and even innovative.
Oh yeah, no, 100%.
But let us know what you guys think of Electric Ladyland down in the comments below, your favorite track, and what your favorite Hendrix album is. As always, Dad, really appreciate the research.
Pleasure.
Diving into these is fun, and if you enjoyed this video, y'all, be sure to remember to hit that big red subscribe button. We upload multiple times a week in a variety of genres. And until next time, y'all, thank you so much for watching. Happy listening, my friends, and we will see you next time.